Welcome to Breaking the Chain, brought to you by Impel Talent. I'm Nathaniel Chapman.
And I'm Nathaniel Chapman.
Welcome back to Breaking the Chain. This week, I'm really excited because we're actually back in the studio, if you can call it a studio. We're definitely working off some makeshift stuff here, but I'm really stoked because this week we're discussing a topic that I think myself and Simon, our guest this week, have encountered a lot in our careers. And we're going to be talking about the really key aspect of balancing top performance and unity amongst teams and ensuring that you can protect the culture and the safety of your team members while also encouraging high performance. So, but first of all, I'd love to welcome our guest, Simon Thomas. Thank you for coming on.
No, thank you. Cheers, Nate. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here.
Absolutely. And Simon is actually founder and managing director of Mind Mastery Labs, which I wanted to make sure I got that right. But do you want to maybe give everyone a bit of an overview to yourself and a bit of an intro before we dive in?
Yeah, well, Mind Mastery Labs is a learning and development company. It's based all around science because being humans, we're massively intricate beings. So working off the fly doesn't really work. Having some sort of basis as to why you want to do something and how you actually go about it, you can actually get the best out of people then, but actually make it a lot more inclusive, rather than this is the way I want, this is the way I've done it, so this is the way you should do it. So it's about just looking at the person themselves and the team, and making sure that they can thrive in their own way.
Well, and that's how we met. I mean, I think it's so fun. I love talking about this because a lot of the guests that come on the podcast come through outreach or networking, or which is what you'd expect, I suppose, from people within recruitment.
Yeah.
But you started your career in recruitment, right? And then worked your way up. I mean, I know you were taking on leadership roles and managing offices and businesses before stepping into doing this training, right?
Yeah, so the leadership piece pretty much started around 2008, something like that, when I was actually working in London just down the road within recruitment. It wasn't something that I thought I would actually venture into, but once I stepped into leadership, I really thought that was the making of me. I thought that really honed in on my skill set. I didn't know it at the time until I was actually thrown into it, as many leaders are these days. But I grew into the role and I started to think about the role a lot, especially about my own behaviour, how it impacted others around me. And I realised that if I worked on creating an environment where people were happy, a lot of it took care of itself, and then it made it easier to bring people along.
Yeah, through following my own path through recruitment and sales and then stepping into leadership roles, I think you see the difference, especially if you've been a high performer in role and transitioned into leadership, into what the different behaviors are needed, but also how you protect everyone at once. And really that's why this topic's such a cool thing for us to open up. So today we're going to discuss how, as leaders, whether you're in recruitment, whether you're in sales, actually it can even be for people who've got high performers in any line of work that you need to protect while also protecting the wider group. But we always maybe sometimes funnel this towards sales or recruitment. And how do we foster this unity and collaboration while also balancing the needs of reward and promotion of your high performers? When I say that to you, what's your initial response?
Well, I think first of all, there is a tendency to let high performers just do what they want to do because they're performing, they're doing what you want them to do, which is perform. Now, performance is a metric in a sense, but that's not the whole story. A lot of companies just leave performers or high performers to do what they want to do, and then they start to wobble, they start to go off the rails, because we're focusing on the rest of the team, trying to bring them up to that level. When you've got a high performer there that you can actually utilize within the whole ecosystem to raise the standards of the whole team. And I think those conversations with high performers, those regular conversations, whether it's one-to-ones, whether it's quarterly, the end of year review, or even at the socials or anything like that, just getting to understand them, and getting to really live the values of the company. Aspect that leads really into mentorship and fosters a real team environment. So sometimes I think high performers are neglected, so they get a bad rep and suddenly they become toxic because companies just leave them alone. When in effect, they need to actually be brought in and actually looked after just as much as the rest of the team.
Yeah, and I think we have I mean, we talk about this a lot at Impel,
Mm,
and actually a lot of coaching and leadership views is it has to start at the culture
mm,
and the environment of the team. I
mm,
mean, we were having the conversation before we jumped in to talk about how I always thought, yes, you can be upset when you have a toxic high performer in the team or they have been let go for too long and
mm,
they rule the roost, right?
mm,
And that's what can really put people off, and they see that you're actually neglecting values that you claim to live by. You
mm,
know, if as a company you have certain behaviors or values that you are adamant that you appeal, it's
mhm,
whether or not when you're in these situations you actually back
mm.
the large organization and hold people accountable for poor behavior.
Yeah.
So really, a lot of times it starts with the environment,
Mhm.
and most people, I mean, you know, it's almost like people saying there people are good and evil. I've always hated that. You know, I think you're victims of circumstance
Yeah.
in many aspects of like you're somebody who's recognized you can perform this way and you can get away with it. I think you were
Mm.
comparing it to having a child or
Yeah.
you know a ruly teenager.
Yeah.
You know, they'll push your boundaries.
Yeah. Oh, completely. And I think that environment is so key. Environment shapes a lot of who we are. And when you're in leadership or a business, you have a duty of care. And with that duty of care, that spans down to leadership from an organizational perspective. So you have a duty of care to your teams. And in that duty of care, it's those people are in your charge, and your job, your role is to help them thrive and to lift them up and to push them forward, and not just focus on the high performing individual and let them run off. You need to be rewarding behaviors. Those behaviors are so important because those behaviors set the tone for the business. Those behaviors set the tone for the team as well. And it is more inclusive when you focus and reward behaviors, not just metrics. Because if you just focus on metrics, there's always going to be a winner. If there's a 100-meter race, there's always going to be a winner. Even to the point now where they're splitting them with a hair's breadth, there's always a winner. And in an organization, yes, there will be winners, but there's also behaviors that need to also win within an organization as well.
At what point do you think a high performer turns from a blessing to a challenge? I think we've all been quite happy to maybe inherit a high performer, and all of a sudden your P&L looks up.
Hmm.
um, but you know, is it a blessing? Is it a challenge? Is it a mixture of the two?
Well, I think it's an evolution. Like any role in any organization or any person within in an organization, there will be ebbs and flows, there will be peaks and troughs. In terms of high performance, they a high performer becomes a challenge when they're left alone. They they're not being listened to. They're not being included. There's only so many pay rises. There's only so many promotions that a high performer can withstand before they start to unravel. A lot of the time, they just need to be listened to. They need to be part of the fabric of the organization. They're successful for a reason. Now, we can either allow them to be successful and be the expert within the organization while they run on their own time, where the rest of the team runs at a different time. So there's a disconnect. And that's not what we want. We want to use that high performance to raise the standards of the entire team. Now, that is it's hard work. That's the work of leadership. Leadership is about understanding that that resource that we have within the team. And once you actually understand that, you can actually start to enable that person to be curious. As soon as that person becomes curious and they're living the behaviors of the team, they are probably the right person for the organization when they enter the business. It still are, it's within there. So something's disconnected, and a lot of the time it's not asking the right questions from leadership that allows people to go off the rails, because it could be something personal, it could be something within the organization, but unless regular conversations are had, no one's going to know.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we to encompass and to bring high performers along the journey of everybody else is to really look at the behavior side. So a lot of the time it's listening, and that is a lot of the time the biggest skill and the biggest role in leadership is actually listening to people It's not creating people in your image. It's about listening and enabling people to be themselves, to thrive within the values of the company.
Yeah. And I think getting a chance to listen and open up with
Mm,
your high performers allows you that space to be vulnerable about
mm.
how their behavior is impacting the larger team, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, from a leadership perspective, not to cut you off there, leaders need to understand that they don't know everything. You won't know everything. And a lot of the time, there are gaps within your own skill set where that high performer can help you. There, so that autonomy side, being part of the strategic element of the business, or even the leadership part of the business as well. There are certain elements you can actually um, allow the high performer to be involved in, to really bring them in, to allow them to show those behaviors that the company wants to elicit. And I think it's a one of the easiest ways to bring high performers and the rest of the team along, because when you're looking from a team perspective and incentivizing the team, because we're very good at incentivizing people,
Yes.
very, very good. But we're not as good as incentivizing a team. In an individual environment, um, in recruitment, if a high performer gets a couple of big placements or a couple of big contracts, everybody goes, well, they've won the incentive.
Yeah.
Nobody really does anything else. They sort of like just do their own jobs. They don't stretch themselves. Whereas each person can have their stretch target, but at the same time, they can have a team stretch target as well. And that a lot of the time that should be focused around the behaviors. Like if we look at the sports personality of the year, they have a team award, but they also have an individual award. And I think companies should be looking at that. And a lot of the time, the team awards is about behind behaviors. It's not just solely on results, because behaviors bring longevity.
I love that. And it really is the difference of fostering like a star culture, star performance
Yeah.
culture, and team culture.
Mm,
And I thought that when we started Impel Talent, the big thing for me that I struggled with in old businesses were these, and I still think they're valuable. So I don't want people to get all upset with me after this, but the lunch clubs,
mm.
right? The high performance clubs, where when I was starting off in recruitment, I loved it, right? Going to fancy restaurants
Oh
every
yeah.
quarter and being
Mm,
in the top performer group is me, leaving at midday, coming in the next day at 10 in the morning. Oh, it
mm.
was like a rite of passage and an
Yeah.
honorable piece. Um, I didn't, that was really disengaging for the
Mm,
rest of the team when I
yeah.
think back on it.
Mm,
Really amazing. And the idea was that people would be so envious of going on that club and wouldn't want to not be on it next time that they would go this time.
mm,
And here we've replaced that with the team incentive. So
mm.
actually, we can go do those lunch clubs, but it'll be for the stretch target
Yeah.
of the entire office.
Yeah.
And I think things like that change people's perception of success.
Mm,
So if you think that person's making commission and being promoted and all the success is owned by them,
mm,
even when some of that delivery has been done by other team members and
mm,
other people have contributed, even if
mm,
they're doing the research element or whatever,
mm,
they've enabled that person to reach that level of success, as you mentioned. So,
mm,
I think that's where a lot of companies struggle is being able to find the right metrics and systems that
mm.
allow you to drive the right behaviors through, joint team and individual rewards.
Yeah, and I think that leads into intrinsic like motivation, because if you look at it, that team element, it feels nice because everyone's with you. Yeah, that person, that researcher may have found that CV for you, they may have profiled that person, so they've contributed. That's the person that is the steady person, week day in day out, churning out those CVs, profiling the right people, presenting them to their managers, etc., etc. But the manager gets the high performance, to get the commissions, to get the lunches, to get the time, the flexibility, but the research is still in the office. Whereas when you look at the team performance, there's there's more engagement from the entire team because they know it's them, and the collective is a lot stronger than the individual, and that high performer also feels that this feels nice, because it's great to have that uh, that perceptual oh great, I've hit my really big placement, I'm going to get great commission. But when it's a larger body of work, it actually feels better. It's like the difference between when a manager when a manager's team excels, feels nicer than them making an individual deal or sale.
I've loved that with some of the bigger consulting groups, right? Like outside of recruitment, you
Mm,
see the big management consultancy firms, if they've closed off a massively big project, they go out together as a
yeah.
group,
Mm,
and I'm sure some of us have seen them out in London
mm,
really, really enjoying themselves. But
mm,
that's quite a neat thing to be celebrating those milestones as a team as opposed to an individual. I love we've been comparing a lot to sports recently, and it's because I remember early in my career someone being like, leadership isn't connected to sports. It's
mm,
very different, it's not it's business, it's not personal. And the more I've actually gotten into evolving as a leader, I've started to correlate a lot to
mm,
how good high performing teams work in sporting environments. And when you think about it, even if you have a star player,
mm,
even a toxic one, I think back to my high school football days, there were some toxic high performers
yeah.
who were the coach's sons and got away with murder.
Mm,
Those behaviors, they caused issues because it started to drive underappreciation
mm,
amongst other team members. When you're underappreciated or you don't feel recognized,
mm,
you don't perform, because you're not actually feeling like the light's been put on you at all, or
mm,
that people even care about you. And that's where the overall team performance, we had some incredible individual performers at my high school team. We
mm,
were losing games
mm,
because the whole unit or the team was not working together to drive those results. But then when you compare that to watching, I've been watching the on Apple TV, just gotten the free trial piece. There's the documentary about the Patriots,
mhm,
and Tom Brady, who's been a top performer there for ages,
yeah.
and obviously one of the best football players in the world. But the way his team pulls around him
Mm,
throughout all of those years because of how he treats
mm,
the team members around him. And it's really important in American football that your O line
mhm,
protects you in the
yeah.
pocket. And he realized that from a very early age.
Mm,
But he also came from being a person who was not a high performer and
mm,
actually like a third string quarterback, working his way into the first team. And that served him in a lot of ways
mm,
for how the team would rally around someone. And I like that comparison because it's interesting that even if you're a toxic high performer on a sports team,
mm,
you're winning games.
yeah.
So the team's winning games.
Mm,
So you're like, that guy's a jerk,
mm.
but like I'm seeing the results of it. So, leave it alone.
I think that's really interesting and a really good point when you compare to teams within business. When you have one-to-ones and you have those conversations and you do your socials and you're having the conversations as a leader, um, the same names will keep being spoken about. Or who do you go to? When you're in trouble, like or you're stuck, who would you speak to? Who would you reach out to? The same names will come along, and it's not always the top performer. You will know if a top performer is going to be a top manager or a top leader because they'll be spoken about not just for what they have achieved, but for what they contribute to the team. And in sport, sometimes teams and managers and clubs, they'll make the top performer the captain. Shouldn't always be like that because sometimes they're in that position, they've achieved that level of success because they've got the low empathy. They purely want the dopamine hit and they go after it. They have very little cortisol. They don't really care. They just want to do this. They want to do that. And a lot of times teams think, well, they'll drag people along. Dragging people along only works for a finite amount of time.
Yeah.
You need to, as a leader, your job is to create space to allow people into that space and rise up. And I think that's the difference between a successful leader and a toxic leader. And sport is a great example because also within a team, many people contribute to the fabric of that team, to the workings of that team in their own way. And a lot of that time, it's about the behavior. It's a lot of the time, it's about a number of people being the go-to people in certain situations, the dependable people, the ones that are unflappable. If the situation arises that's difficult, they're the ones that roll the sleeves up. They'll go, okay, we can handle this. Okay, what's the issue? Okay, let's break it down. Okay, how are we going to overcome this? And that team element is so important. And that those behaviors, it's the longevity of those behaviors that is critical. And I think leaders, whether they're toxic leaders, they really do need to understand that the sum is greater than the individual.
And it's protecting those individuals
Mm,
that may not be your high performers, but
mm,
drive that
yeah.
result. There's a thing in rugby. It's like you have your sort of enforcers, or you have
Mm,
people that play in the forward pack that don't get any of the glory,
yeah.
right? They hit the rucks, they do
Mm,
the tackling,
mm,
they're not scoring the tries, they're not go chasing the glory.
mm,
And it's always funny, as I've played rugby throughout my, not anymore, very broken man, um, but they're individuals that were made captain that you go, they're just put in work,
yeah.
and it is their belief in how the team will win and drive towards reward. And there are people like that in organizations that
Mm,
are underappreciated. I used to, in my first corporate job, I used to do distribution operations
mm,
for Target.
mm-hmm.
People who listen to the podcast, I've probably said it before. But it was interesting. There were two guys in my team that have now gone on to become managers, but they weren't university educated, but they've been in the company for a long
Yeah.
time. And they are the people that, as you mentioned, my team would go to.
Mm,
If they have problems,
mm,
they get called on the radio. And I
mm,
picked it up when I was working there, right?
mm-hmm.
Like, who are they kind of drifting towards? And then we do this exercise with organizations we work with for coaching and leadership development. It's like a leadership audit. It's like, okay, who do you think the leaders are within that team?
Mm,
And then when you actually interview people in the team, asking them not broader questions like who's your manager or director, but those little
yeah.
questions. Who do you go to?
Mm,
What's like when this sort of situation arises? Who do you want next? All the you start to pick up who actually has real influence
yeah.
over the team. And it's those sort of things that protecting that unit
Mm,
is where things become really interesting
mm,
and where you actually see real high level performance.
mm.
So
And I think, yeah, and that leads on to promotion, because a lot of the time those people are doing a lot of the unseen work. But those are people actually leading in their own right, in their own way. And it's quiet work, but it's very, very valuable work. And it's work that can actually span the organization. And those are the ones, this is why the one-to-ones are so important. This is why those quarterlies and the little chats here and there are so important to actually understand the dynamics of a team and where promotion should be happening. Because if leaders and organizations aren't having those one-to-ones and those conversations, they don't know, because no one's suddenly going to volunteer that information. It really needs to just allowed to be come out, allowed to have come out through just casual one-to-ones or formal one-to-ones. And I think that communication piece is so important, because I think as well it leads on to safety, or psychological safety, in terms of what people need to feel comfortable in having those conversations. Because a lot of time people aren't comfortable because they'll see the high performer, they'll see the high fives, they'll see the lunch clubs, they'll see the coming in at 10 o'clock. So a lot of them will say, well, who do you go to? Well, I go to John Smith. And a lot of the time it's because I think that's what they should say, rather than it being right. And only in a safe environment where are people going to feel empowered to actually say what they really truly feel. And that's what, again, it boils down to the environment you set.
when you see leadership, so you were talking about the promotions and stuff
Mm,
the high performers will go through. When you see leadership actually promoting someone into a managerial or director or
mm,
focused role, even with no responsibilities, which happens a lot, right?
mm,
With senior sales
yeah.
professionals, director or so on,
Mm,
but they're individual contributors, or whatever.
mm,
But it's what that means to individuals because they're being promoted not
mm,
based on the values or the
mm,
behaviors, but on just bottom line.
mm,
And I find um, public recognition, and this is like bonuses, leaderboards. When can these sort of things backfire on
mm,
a team? And it's in these situations where people just think the only thing I'm being recognized for
mm,
is that bottom line.
mm,
And I think if you can't widen the scope of understanding what are things that people are recognizing that they will be evaluated on
mm,
in their end of year review, in their
mm,
one-to-ones, in their quarterly review, then you are just going to replicate people that are
yeah.
fighting over the scoreboard.
Mm. Well, recruitment is one of the sectors where people like to create people in their own image. And it's a historical fact in terms of promotion, in terms of recognition. It goes in two ways. Recognition is hugely important for people that are performing well, without a doubt. It should be recognized, but at the same time, it shouldn't. Generally, it's just focused on those metrics. They've hit their monthly, they've hit their quarterly, they've hit their year. They may have they're not really incentivized to show anything else. We're essentially saying to people, saying to high performers, you're just one dimensional, when we're actually three-dimensional beings. We contribute an awful lot. Yeah, that they may be really good at hitting targets and closing deals. And yes, the P&L looks absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, there is more to them. But if we're just allowing them to do that, not having the conversations, there may be other parts of them they want to show, but don't feel it's necessary, don't feel that it will be rewarded, or don't feel that it's actually warranted.
This comes down to what we were talking about. If you're not creating the environment that allows people that doesn't recognize those behaviors, don't be surprised that those behaviors aren't being demonstrated.
Yeah.
I like a lot of people, and well, I'll go on a tangent if I get on this too far, but I always find recruitments like you've mentioned, where I think a lot of companies you'll walk into and it'll be like carbon copies.
Yeah.
We talk about this with hiring through culture, and it's interesting. Recruitment companies aren't the best at that by any stretch. And it's because they haven't established a set string of these are our values. We have a lot in our company. We have a very wide variety of people, and I always get people asking like, how do you do that? Like, are you interviewing for a certain way, or do you do specific outreach? I said it actually happens just very naturally, because if you build a good purpose statement and a vision statement, and you can analyze people on their values properly,
Yeah.
and you have a system for making that happen, you sort of eliminate biased hiring. We hire people based on good feeling, right? And you build that gut feeling, because if you don't have values and you don't have a set structure, you only do it off things that you know.
Yeah.
So you're like, you like Arsenal, I like Arsenal. Oh, you grew up in this part of town, I grew up. And those little things start to bring people in, start getting carbon copies, start being rewarded for financial performance. So that's why I know I keep stressing about this. And I know we've talked about this in other episodes, but it always comes back down to culture and values and vision. And then it always, from there, is how you start to reward and benefit those team members. But maybe let me ask this, because moving a little bit further along, we talk about financial rewards and targets and promotion. What are other, maybe like, rather than development or financial rewards, other rewards that can be just as powerful?
Well, yes, certainly. I think financial is great, but it only takes you a certain area. In terms of non-financial, certainly areas like, growth. Like, where are we going as a team? Where do I fit in? Because I think there was a statistic says that even with promotion, 44% of higher performers are still looking to leave. Their CV still on Indeed or LinkedIn or somewhere like that. So that's nearly 50% of your high performers are being promoted. They're earning really good money, but they're still not fulfilled. And fulfillment generally doesn't happen around money. Fulfillment is like that nice fuzzy feeling. So a lot of it is about, okay, so where's my value within this company outside of money? And a lot of that is to do with, okay, so what's my trajectory? Where can I go? So am I going to be in charge of people? How do I do that? I've always wanted to, but I don't think I'm good at it. Can I get coaching for that? Are you going to help me? There's so many elements that high performers are crying out for. And a lot of the time it's leaders and owners just stick to, oh my God, you've had a great year, you've had this, you've had that, or look at the bonuses you've got, or you're taking most of the budget from me again next year, etc., etc. And it's just focused on that, where it should be, okay, give me your opinion, where should the company be going next? Like, suddenly you're bringing them into the fabric of the organization. You're making their views valuable. They now start to intrinsically own part of this business and go, you know what, yeah, because I'm directly involved in this now. I'm setting the direction. I'm setting the direction for the team. If you want them to buy into the team and you want them to buy into the organization, allow them to be part of it. Give them that autonomy. Look at your own skill set as a leader and go, okay, if there's a part of your skill set where you know some of your high performers are better at than you, allow them to actually take that on board. Give them the autonomy, set the direction, and make them feel wanted, rather than, oh, let's just, and incentivize them for that. Don't just stick to those natural KPIs. Be creative, because they are going to hit their target because they have done for the number of years. But if you want their journey to be more rounded and fulfilled, be creative in terms of your non-financial structure. And that, again, if like for instance we take the strategic input, that's long-term vision. That they're setting out a long-term plan for themselves and for the company as well. And what do you want in high performers? You want them to be engaged long-term, but you also want them to be evolving as well. Their evolvement is hugely crucial, because if they don't evolve, they become stagnant, and then that starts to affect their performance.
Yeah, and I think if people are starting to understand they're being valued for different things within the
Mm,
organization, naturally you start to realize, okay, I'm not just a fee earner.
mm,
I have other value that I can bring.
mm.
You mentioned development, which I loved, and I don't mean this as a plug because we
Mm.
both run coaching firms, but I do find that lots of people fight for promotion, or that's
Mm,
something that they're looking for. And
mm,
again, it offers a very short-term dopamine
mm,
hit when you
mm.
get that
But
promotion,
what
and
does
that
that promotion offer? What the promotion does it offer for them?
yes. And I also think there's all these things that people always think, and the modern employee is changing.
Mm,
And we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but in the past, people were very keen on money and title.
mm,
And it is a generational thing. And it
mm,
is stuff that has come from where people grew up in
mm,
the environments and their situation. And if we go
mm.
down this path, will be another hour. But now we're seeing millennials and Gen Zs that
Mm,
now are the majority of the environment, who are more interested in what will the company do for me, and
mm,
what environment are they setting for me,
mm,
and do they really have a purpose? Do they
mm,
really have a mission, a real direction? And when I am going to get promoted or not promoted, what development are they willing to put into me? And not
mm,
development that is just time set aside by one
mm.
of the leaders in the company, but extra educational
Yeah.
value. And we found this so much with people who are being promoted that then great, they've got the promotion that they've been fighting for, but they're unprepared
Mm,
for that move. And they
mhm,
do become disengaged because
mm,
they haven't been given the tools to step up into that role immediately.
mm,
So actually taking a step back to think, well, actually, instead of making that promotion immediate because of their financial end numbers, tying that into behavior and then
mm,
saying, we've recognized that you're demonstrating these behaviors, and now we're putting you on this external program,
mm,
which will in 12 months lead to this, and
mhm,
this proper development plan. We'll feel more comfortable with you after hitting that milestone, sitting in on more
mm.
SLT meetings. And all of a sudden you're starting to see someone really gravitate to the business
Mm.
rather than just what can the company give me, but what can I
Yeah.
give to the business?
Exactly. And I think that transition is hugely important, because I think what you're taking someone out of is a safe environment and putting them into an unsafe environment. And it may be the same organization, it's probably the same desk, it's the same phone, it's the same machine that they're working from, but it's a completely different outlook that they're now expected to know. And that transition is scary, because suddenly, instead of a group of you looking out that way, you are now looking back at the group, and it's a different perspective, because you're now thinking as part of, you're thinking like the organization. You're now suddenly got this group of people that you need to care for, that because you've got your duty of care, and that transition is hugely important. And if that transition is not managed effectively, easily a lot of people within 18 months will be gone, because they're suddenly like, well, this is not for me, I want to go back to my old role. And so you'll find that companies lose really, really valuable people because they haven't managed that transition.
Yeah. And I think it breeds resentment because you have team members that then get pulled into that team
Mm,
or are starting to treat someone that used to be their colleague a few
mm,
months ago. And all of a sudden they've been thrown into a leadership role, and then their behavior changes, but not for the better. And,
mm,
so I think there's, I mean, how would you, if you had to define systems that you could put in place,
mm,
like if we take a look at reward structures,
mhm,
what kind of reward structures in your mind, and we're already talking about some, don't
mm,
breed resentment?
yeah.
Because what I really liked, a few of the things that you're saying, is once you start to get them to spin it and think about, well, what behaviors or how are you driving the business forward,
Mm,
interestingly, the rewards that you've put in place, the rest of the business benefits from
mm.
because you're actually seeing someone put in. But what other reward structures would you put in place that would help lower resentment or wouldn't have resentment when you're, when someone is receiving some sort of
Well,
monetary incentive or promotion or whatever.
yeah, well, a lot of it is around the values that the company sets that leads to behaviors, and what you're looking for in that leader is one, support the leader, but two, but also engender those behaviors of the company and the team. If you're promoting those behaviors within yourself, your team will live by those behaviors as well. And productivity outcomes generally rises because they feel safe. They feel absolutely safe. What does that give the leader? That gives the leader validation. It gives huge amounts of validation. They've made the right move. So it gives them safety, and it also gives the organization safety that they've made the right transition as well. But from that perspective as well, they are now in a position to now develop those other performers. The reason why a lot of high performers, when they move into a leadership role, become toxic is because they look back at the team and they go, well, like I could do that. I used to do this in my sleep. Again, because they're trying to embody their own image on somebody else. And a lot of the time in leadership, it's about allowing people to to make those mistakes, knowing that you can help them retrieve, but if you allow them to make that mistake and enable them to actually fix that mistake, not do it for them, enable them to fix that mistake, give them the tools, that person will now step up. But if you don't, if you move into once you move into that leadership position, if you're constantly, oh no, this is how you do it, that frustration will degrade the team, and it will also degrade you as a leader.
Yeah, I think the one of the things to leads to that is the transparency around decisions that are made
Mm,
or promotion criteria. So financial rewards, people like to feel like things have been treated fair, right? They haven't been
yeah.
underrepresented, or you're not
Mm,
favoring team members, or so if you're able to say these financial rewards are in place and here's how you can benefit from
mm,
them, and you make it accessible in my mind that people can
mm,
reach them, and you are helping promote everyone in the team to reach those goals, and some people are just reaching them sooner than you are.
mm-hmm,
But also then transparency around decisions for promotions, because I think sometimes people, like we've mentioned earlier in this episode,
mm,
are being promoted based on bottom line,
mm,
but people aren't recognizing the behavior. So if you're taking the time in your reward system to realize that this promotion or this recognition, it does involve everybody. It
mm,
impacts everybody.
mm,
So you need to be able to demonstrate, and I
yeah.
think that's a big thing. I usually would have as a conversation with high performers on my team now, or people that are moving into more leadership roles or taking on responsibilities, is you got to bring people with you.
Mm,
And to do that, you have to be demonstrating these behaviors before I give you this promotion.
mm, yeah.
Because actually, people, and I love this with our Emerge leadership program, we talk about the best time to implement it
Mm,
is 12 months before you promote the person.
yeah,
So
indeed.
that the
Yeah.
team is like, you should announce the promotion. Someone's like, I
Mm,
thought you already had that job, or
mm,
I thought she already had that job.
yeah.
And that's the perfect dream piece, because actually people are starting to demonstrate behaviors that the team buy into
Mm,
and recognize is leadership. So I think it's a good thing for people to take away from this episode.
mm,
Everything has optics,
yeah.
everything has feelings and emotions surrounding it, whether you're the person receiving the promotion or the wider team.
Mm-hmm,
So driving down resentment is about transparency,
mm,
vulnerability, psychological safety, but it's combining a lot of those elements to just be like,
mm,
hey, let's make sure that people are coming along with you on this journey of development,
yeah.
and also it's helping the wider team.
Yeah. I think you got to look at a team. It's a community. And in a community, there's several leaders within that community. Yes, they do gravitate to one person, but I think when it comes to setting targets and structure and incentives and rewards, the whole community should be involved. It shouldn't be a case of it's just handed down. Yeah, I've been that person where I've handed down the targets, the rewards, the incentives, and when I've looked at it, when only certain people were hitting those targets, the next time, the next year, we actually did it together. We actually did approach, sat down for a day, and was like, okay, right, so where this is where we are. This is where the company needs to go. So this is the budget we have for recognition incentives and away days and things like this, and that we came up with our own structure for incentives. And what that did, it empowered everyone in the team, and they actually
They feel
understood.
involved.
Yeah, they actually
Yeah.
understood how to actually get there because they started to break it down in their heads. Whereas generally, you receive a target and they go, "Oh, okay, then right, so I've got to do." okay, right, okay, like, and it was just purely on the target. But when it and luckily we did look a lot of the behaviors as well. So it was around 50-50. So a lot of it's half of it was KPIs, half of it was behaviors. And what that did, it really engendered and fostered collaboration because it enabled it, we were you could see the information share going on within the business. And that was amazing because then my role wasn't as needed. It was very much autonomous because they were like working amongst themselves to actually go, okay, right, this is where we are now. We're halfway. Oh, we're actually 55%. So we're 5% ahead of where we need to be. And we got them to run the meetings, the catch ups and things like this. So they were really empowered to actually drive their target and achieve their rewards at the end of it.
and own the results,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
really cool.
Mm.
Let's maybe wrap up. I love this this whole episode, but what would you maybe tell a new team leader now about managing this balance? Like if there's a piece of advice you could take on to new Thomas leader, don't know how long ago I want to say it, but in the beginning of your career,
Yeah,
what's something you might say, this is a piece of advice that people
yeah.
could take from this episode and implement?
You can't control everything. Allow things to happen. Allow things to happen, and then you can work with people to enable them to thrive. Because I've always been a bit of a control freak, and it's really hard to step back and allow people to be people and not do it in your way. You may have a goal. People, I may get to it like that. Others may do it like this, but allow them to be them.
Yeah, interestingly, I was going to say that it's micromanagement is very difficult. I've never been good at it because I'm not very organized. So I think it's funny because I use it as a strength when people come into the business. I'm like, look, I'm not a micromanager. I just want to know if we're on the right track and how can I help. And I'd rather be a coach than a manager. But I think it's because I also am just the most unorganized person. It's my biggest weakness. Our head of finance will tell you she's boggled by me sometimes. But I have always thought that the more you can allow people to make mistakes, and I think that's the hardest piece, especially for me as I started to grow and start to hand over accounts and business units, and is realize just how capable people are.
Yeah.
And actually, when people make mistakes, I've used this example before, but in rugby, if you get on someone's case about a mistake, their performance drops again. Which is so fascinating, right? People beat themselves up harder than you'll ever beat them up internally. So really being able to build people up, which is what the whole purpose of this episode has been, right? We want to make sure we're building up everyone in the team because actually that's where you get something special. That's where you get a really good team performance.
Yeah.
When you bash people's performance or you make people feel underappreciated, directly or indirectly, the overall team performance suffers.
Yeah.
And I've talked
It
about this
lingers like a virus.
100%. Conflict is the biggest impact on your performance, profitability. It's just so much dead downtime, right? Because people are worrying, stressed, they're having anxiety around something they've said to a colleague, around what someone has said, around a promotion that happened, or all this stuff that creates conflict is all time that people are not working and contributing to your values and your vision. And I've realized a long time ago, let people get on with it, give as much support as possible, even when you know they may be stepping into a bit of a mistake or a problem. Let them kind of experience it and be there for when the pieces fall. As long as it's not a client critical
If you don't
project.
fall, you won't learn.
No.
Like if we're like, it's like back to the children analogy, like you see them go from crawl to walking and they fall over constantly. Literally, they go backwards, they go left, they go right, they go all over the place. But that it's a process. Everything is a process. And so that's why I think sometimes making a transition, or if you're not a high performer, you have to create that environment where it's okay to fail. There's a great acronym that I read. It's by created by Stella Collins. She wrote a book about neuroleadership, and it's called GEAR, which is guide, experiment, apply, and retain. And what that is based on is when you're teaching someone a new skill, you've got to guide them, and they've got to apply it to the business, but in a safe environment. also experiment within the biz. Then they've got to apply it within the biz, and then and that helps them retain it, because once they retain it, it helps them then transfer it onto somebody else, and that's really what you want. And I think it's really sad that only 15% of all L&D is actually implemented within a business. And you think, well, what's the point in sending people on these courses if you're not going to allow them to apply it? Because it's there for their person's personal development, but also it benefits the organizational development as well. And I think they go really, really hand in hand. But a lot of it is just breathe, create that space for other people to grow into. But also, when you breathe as a leader, you'll create your own space from which to grow into as well.
Absolutely. I'll leave everyone with this. This has been a tremendous episode, Simon. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to have you back, especially now I've got the equipment set up and I figured out how it all works. I'll leave you guys all with this. And I think it's a question that you should reflect on at any point in time as a leader in a sales environment or a high performing environment. Is your culture rewarding the right things, the right behavior? That's all we've talked about this episode. And realistically, when things are not going right, or you do have toxicity within the team, you have to take responsibility for that and really analyze, what am I doing to incentivize team, to incentivize individuals? Because it's not one or the other. It's got to be a happy harmony.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on the show.
No problem. Simon. Really good.
Absolutely. I'm going to try and thank you all for joining us. Please do come back. If you're interested in learning a little bit more, you can go on www.impeltalent.com/podcast. And if you have questions for upcoming episodes or have stuff that you'd like to contribute, or if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, please do email us at info@impeltalent.com. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining us for our latest episode of Breaking the Chain. If you'd like to see more episodes, you can check us out online at www.impeltalent.com/podcast. And if you'd like to perhaps put a question into us or be featured on one of our next episodes, you can email us at info@impeltalent.com. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next week.